I need you to stop whatever you're doing right now, because what I'm about to share with you, these aren't campfire stories. These aren't things I read online at 2 a.m. These are real accounts from real people whose lives were never the same after what they witnessed. 4 stories, 4 encounters, and by the time this video ends, you're going to question everything you think you know about what's out there in the dark. My name doesn't matter. What matters is this: every single one of these events happened, and not one of them has ever been explained.
TheSpiritVox, it's alive.
Welcome back to TheSpiritVox, the channel where we don't chase ghosts. We listen to the people they chose to visit. Today's video is different from anything I've posted before. I spent weeks collecting these stories. I verified locations. I spoke to people. And what I found gave me chills that I still feel today. These 4 encounters share one thing in common. They all happened in places that looked completely ordinary. A lake, a country road, a small town neighborhood, a college dorm, normal places, impossible things. Let's begin. I want you to picture a calm summer evening on the water, a wooden boat, a family enjoying the late afternoon breeze. That's exactly how it started for the Caldwell family. It was the summer of 1972. Margaret Caldwell, a grandmother, a woman of deep faith, was traveling with her husband Earl, their daughter-in-law Susan, and several of their grandchildren. They were crossing Lake Millhaven in southern Louisiana, headed toward her sister's home a few miles downstream. The boat was old but reliable, a sailboat, no engine, just wind and oars, the kind of vessel people used out there before gas-powered engines were everywhere. They set out around 10:30 at night. The sky was clear, the stars were out, the water was still. It was, by all accounts, a beautiful night to be on the lake. For the first hour, everything was perfect. Then the wind changed. Margaret said it first. She felt it before anyone else did. A shift in the air. Not the normal evening breeze that comes off the water. Something else. Something heavier. Like the air itself was being pushed away from a specific direction. Within minutes, the boat was surrounded by strong, unnatural gusts. But here's what was strange. Boats anchored nearby showed no sign of wind. Trees on the distant shore didn't move. The flags on a dock they'd passed earlier, perfectly still. The wind was only touching them. And then the light changed. Susan was the first to notice it. She described it later as the sky going gray in a circle. Around the boat, like something above them was swallowing the moonlight. The temperature dropped. The children went quiet. And that's when Margaret saw her. Sitting at the back edge of the boat, right behind Susan, close enough to reach out and touch her, was a woman. She was dressed in a deep red garment. A dress or a shawl, Margaret couldn't tell exactly. The fabric moved in the wind even though nothing else around them did. The woman's face was turned slightly toward Susan, and she was smiling. Not a warm smile, not a friendly smile. Margaret described it as a smile that had no kindness behind it, like the expression on a face that has forgotten what kindness feels like. Susan hadn't seen her yet. One of the grandchildren, a girl of about 11, also spotted the woman at the same moment Margaret did. They locked eyes, the girl and her grandmother, and neither one said a word. Margaret reached out and took her husband Earl's arm. "Earl," she whispered, "look behind Susan. Don't move fast. Just look." Earl turned slowly. He saw her too. And before anyone could speak, before Susan could be warned, Margaret called out in a low, controlled voice, "Susan, don't move. Look behind you, slowly." The moment those words left Margaret's mouth, the woman jumped. Not off the boat in a panic, not in a startled reaction. She rose, smooth, deliberate, and dropped straight into the water. No splash, no sound, like a stone falling into sand. And the moment she hit the water, everything changed back. The wind stopped, the sky cleared, the moonlight returned. The temperature rose back to the warm summer night it had been. Susan spun around. Nothing there. Earl immediately told the boat's guide, a local man who had been steering them, to change course. The guide turned pale when they described what they'd seen. He said that particular stretch of Lake Millhaven had a history. Boats drifting off course, engines failing without explanation. More than once, fishermen reported coming home missing hours they couldn't account for. He said the locals had a name for that part of the lake. They called it the Widow's Reach, and they didn't cross it after dark. The Caldwell family never took that route again. And Susan, who never saw the woman in red, said for years afterward that she sometimes felt, on quiet evenings, like someone was sitting just behind her, watching, waiting. She never found out for what. That story was shared with me by a woman who said she was Margaret Caldwell's granddaughter, the same girl on the boat that night. She's in her 60s now. She said she's never told that story publicly before. And she said one more thing before we ended our conversation. Whatever that woman wanted, she was looking at Susan like she was going to get it. This next story, I want to be honest with you. This one bothered me the most out of everything I collected for this video, because it didn't happen to an adult, it happened to a child, a 7-year-old girl named Lily. And what makes it worse is that it didn't end when she ran home. Lily's mother, Dina, worked as a housekeeper for a family in a rural part of Georgia, deep country, the kind of place where the nearest town is 20 minutes away and the roads don't have names, just numbers. The property they worked on sat at the edge of a long dirt road called Old Timber Road. Nobody lived on that road anymore. There had been homes there once. You could still see the foundations if you knew where to look, but for decades, it had been empty. Just trees, overgrown fields, and silence. The locals called it the Hollow Road. They didn't talk about why. One evening in late October, Dina was working late because the family she worked for had guests coming. She sent Lily ahead to walk home. It was around 7:30, still some light in the sky. The walk was less than 10 minutes through the back path, which cut through the edge of Old Timber Road. Dina had walked it with Lily dozens of times. She thought it was fine. She gave Lily a snack, tied her jacket, and told her to go straight home, no stopping. Lily was wearing a red dress that day. She set off down the path. About halfway down Old Timber Road, Lily stopped. On the side of the path, standing very still next to an old oak tree, was a girl. She looked to be Lily's age. Same height, same build. She was wearing a pale dress and she had her arm outstretched, her hand open, palm up, like she was waiting for something to be placed in it. Lily said the girl looked exactly like her, the same face, the same hair, the same red dress, except when Lily looked closer, the other girl's dress was darker, like the color had been washed out of it. And then Lily looked down. The girl had no feet. She was hovering just slightly above the ground, not flying, not dramatically suspended, just not quite touching the earth, like gravity had a slightly different opinion about her. Lily said she didn't scream, she didn't run, she just stood there, frozen, staring at the girl who wore her face. The footless girl slowly turned her head and smiled. Lily ran. She ran the rest of the path and didn't stop until she was in the front yard of her family's home. She collapsed on the porch. Her grandmother found her there, unable to speak, gasping for air. When she finally calmed down enough to describe what she'd seen, her grandmother went pale. She knew Old Timber Road. She'd grown up in that county, and she'd heard stories from her own mother, from neighbors, about something on that road that appeared to children. A figure without feet, a figure that wore the face of whoever saw it. Nobody knew where the story came from. Nobody could trace it back to an event or a person. It was just something people in that area knew, the way you know not to swim in certain parts of certain rivers. Lily spent the next year in a way her family described as not herself. She would walk to the edge of their property on evenings, specifically at dusk, and stand there looking down the road. When her mother asked what she was doing, Lily would say she was waiting for her friend to come back. She didn't remember saying it afterward. After about 14 months, it stopped. She never went to the edge of the property again. She never brought up Old Timber Road. Her mother, Dina, still lives near that area. She told me she drives an extra 7 minutes to avoid that road every single day. She said, whatever was on that road, it looked at my daughter like it recognized her, like she was something it had been expecting. I need to set the scene for this one. It's 2008, December, a cold, clear night in rural Mississippi, the kind of cold that makes everything sharp and still, the kind of night where you can see everything for miles because there's nothing in the way. A man named Thomas, 31 years old at the time, was riding his bicycle home from the next town over. He'd gone to watch a movie at a theater about 8 miles away, and he was making the trip back on Highway 9, a long, flat stretch of road that cuts through farmland and forest. He'd done this ride dozens of times. He knew every curve, every pothole, every fence post. That night, somewhere around midnight, Thomas noticed something on his right, a horse. A large white horse walking along the side of the road. He didn't think much of it at first. Horses got out sometimes. It wasn't unusual to see one near the road. He figured it had broken through a fence somewhere and would wander back eventually. But then he noticed something that made his stomach drop. The horse was keeping pace with him. Exactly. He was cycling at a solid speed, faster than a horse walks. But the horse was walking, a normal, easy walk, and it was staying right beside him, step for step. Thomas sped up. The horse kept pace. He slowed down. The horse slowed. He stopped completely, feet on the ground, staring at the animal. The horse stopped too, and turned its head toward him, said its eyes were wrong. He couldn't explain it better than that. The eyes were the right shape, the right position, but when the moonlight hit them, there was something in there that didn't look like an animal. He said it looked like something that had studied what a horse's eyes were supposed to look like, and almost gotten it right. Thomas started pedaling again, fast, hard. The horse walked beside him. He crossed through Millwood, the small town that served as the halfway point, a gas station, a post office, a few streetlights. The horse disappeared at the edge of the town. He looked back, and it was gone. He breathed. He kept going. 5 minutes later, on the other side of town, back on the dark stretch of highway, the horse reappeared. Same position, right beside him, walking. Thomas later said this was the moment his mind broke a little, not because of what he was seeing, but because of what it meant. The town had been a break, a pause, and it had picked back up exactly where it left off, like it had been waiting for the town to end. When he was about half a mile from his family's property, close enough to see the lights of the house, the horse stepped out in front of him. Not aggressive, not charging. It simply moved from beside him to in front of him and stopped. Thomas stopped. He got off his bike. He was terrified, but something in him understood that running wasn't an option. He closed his eyes. He started praying, the words coming out in fragments, whatever he could remember, whatever he knew by heart. He prayed for 2, maybe 3 minutes. When he opened his eyes, he was standing in his family's front yard. His bicycle was not with him. It was back on the road, leaning against the fence post where he'd gotten off it. He was inside the gate. He did not remember walking those last 500 feet. He never crossed that section of Highway 9 on foot or bicycle again. And for a long time after that night, he refused to go outside after dark. His cousin, who heard the story the next morning, told me, Thomas isn't someone who makes things up. He's the most practical, no-nonsense person I've ever met. The fact that he was shaken when he told us, that scared me more than the story. The white horse was never found. No farms in the area reported a missing horse that week. Nobody else on that road that night reported seeing anything. Whatever walked beside Thomas on Highway 9 that December, it wasn't a horse. This last story is the one that made me lose sleep, because it's not about something you see. It's about something that follows you home. It started, as so many terrible things do, with an act of kindness. Daniel Mercer ran a small fabric and alterations shop in the old quarter of Savannah, Georgia. He'd inherited the shop from his father, who inherited it from his father before him. 3 generations in the same building, on the same cobblestone block. One evening, maybe an hour before closing, a man came in. Daniel's exact description: disheveled, confused looking, wearing layered clothing that didn't match the season. He wandered around the shop for a few minutes without saying anything. Then he approached the counter and asked in a very calm voice if Daniel would take his coat, not buy, not exchange, give. He wanted to give Daniel his coat, the long gray coat he was wearing over everything else. Daniel said no. He had no use for someone else's coat, and the man looked like he might need it. But the man persisted, quietly, politely, but persistently. He didn't want money. He just wanted someone to take the coat. Daniel's assistant, a young woman named Carrie, leaned over and whispered that maybe they should just take it. The man seemed harmless, and he clearly needed to leave without it for some reason. So Daniel agreed. He took the coat. The man thanked him, nodded, and left. Daniel set the coat on a hook near the back and forgot about it. That was a Thursday. By Sunday, Daniel's life had started to unravel. It started small, a sense of being watched in rooms he knew were empty. Waking up at 3 a.m. every night with the feeling that something was standing at the foot of his bed. Looking up from work and being certain for just a split second that someone was in the corner of the room before his eyes adjusted. Then it got worse. He told Carrie about it on the following Wednesday. She listened and then slowly went pale, because she'd had the same experience. Every night since Thursday she'd been waking up at the same time, with the same feeling, the same sense of a presence. She worked in the shop. She was around the coat. Daniel went to the hook at the back of the shop where he'd left it. He pulled the coat down and checked the pockets, not sure what he was looking for. In the inside breast pocket, folded into a small square, was a piece of cloth. Old fabric, looked like it had been cut from something much larger, and stitched onto it in someone else's handwriting was a name and a date, a man's name, and a date from 1987. Daniel brought the coat to a woman in the area who was known for what people around Savannah politely call spiritual discernment, an older woman named Miss Ruth, who had been advising families in that neighborhood for decades. She looked at the coat for a long time without touching it. Then she told Daniel that whoever had brought that coat in had been trying to transfer something. Not a demon, not a ghost in the Hollywood sense, but a binding, an attachment. Something that had been placed on that coat through deliberate ritual, probably a long time ago, that attached itself to whoever held it. She said the piece of cloth with the name was a tether, and whoever the name belonged to, that was the origin point of whatever had been following Daniel and Carrie around. Miss Ruth dealt with the coat. Daniel said he doesn't know exactly what she did, and he didn't ask. She told him not to ask. The disturbances stopped within 48 hours. Carrie quit the job a month later, not because of what happened, she said, but because she couldn't walk through the door of that shop without looking over her shoulder at the back corner where the hook still hung, even though the coat was gone. She said she never felt like that corner was empty again. Daniel still runs the shop. He took the hook down. He filled the hole in the wall. He repainted. When I asked him what he'd do if a stranger walked in and tried to give him something he didn't ask for, he said, "I'd close the shop."
TheSpiritVox. It's alive.
Four stories, four places, four moments when ordinary life cracked open and something else looked through. The woman in red on the lake who disappeared the moment she was noticed. The footless girl who wore a child's face on an empty road. The white horse that kept perfect pace with a bicycle at midnight. The coat that came with something attached. I don't have explanations for any of these. I've asked people smarter than me. I've gone through old records and local histories. What I keep coming back to is this. Every single person who shared these stories with me said the same thing at the end of our conversation, without me asking, without prompting. They said, "I don't tell people this because no one believes it." I believe it. And I think if you're watching this channel, if you're still here at the end of this video, part of you believes it too. If something has happened to you, if you've seen something you can't explain, if you felt something in a room that shouldn't have been there, send it to us. Leave it in the comments. Message the channel. Because here at TheSpiritVox, we don't dismiss what we can't explain. We listen. Stay safe out there and leave the lights on tonight.